Hello there, YouTube. I'm gonna do a little bit of a commentary today. Nothing in an actual game. I'm just gonna be running around the map here a little bit. But I want to talk about something that's kind of important in AVA. You've probably seen it around. It's important in other games. It's a little bit different for every game, but in general, I think it's around the same. And I'll just start off with something a little bit general here. When you're talking about clans and teams and top level play and competition in general, hold on, wait. Sorry, I had to fix my mic. Competition in general, you're gonna hear a lot of things as a new player. You're gonna hear you should have how to say this, you know it's all about the kills. You hear about the amazing players like Kimpa, Snow Shovel, Quelly. Oh wow, they drop 20 kills, 4 deaths. They're so good. And you hear things like oh, this guy gets all the kills, he's amazing. And then you hear things like, oh, Michael 3D, he's so bad, he goes negative in CS:GO all the time, he doesn't get enough kills. You know what I mean? And you hear those kind of things. But then you also hear some whispers too, like, oh, he's an objective player. You hear things like, oh, he's supporting his teammates. You hear things like, he's the bomb carrier, you know what I mean? And you're like, what are all these roles? And you hear all these things about, like, strats, and you hear, you'll watch Call of Duty Pro videos and CSGO Pro videos, they have, like, exact strats, supposedly, where people go and stand at this spot, throw this grenade at this time, kind of deal. And, like, honestly, but then you'll hear other people like me here telling you that's not a good idea. So what I'm going to talk about today, revealing topic here, is team roles. In AVA, I used to think, team roles would be something like a fragger, a support player, a strat caller, and anchor kind of person. And what I used to think that they were was like a fragger was like, okay, that's the guy everybody hears about, the one who gets all the attention, like Kimpa, Quelly, I don't know, Skadoodle, to name a few, like all the people you know. What do you know them for? Oh, they're amazing. They get all these kills. They're so good at aiming. You don't hear anything about that guy who, plants the bomb every round, or doesn't die with the bomb ever, right? You don't hear anything about that guy who calls all the amazing strats that helps the team win the round, do you? Yeah, so the fragger is that, and my definition on that's pretty much the same. Now, it's a strat caller is, like I said, the guy who calls the strats. He's the one communicating. Now, as I said before, I don't agree with strats as in, go here, throw this nade at this round. So you're asking me, well, what is a strat caller then? Strat caller is the one, in my opinion, what you should have instead of like having exact preset strats, is you should just play off the round. So like when you spawn, you just kind of like go off your spawn unless you have a direct reason, like say somebody's really good at playing too, then maybe they'll go to you. But other than that, you should just go off spawn, pretty much play it lightly, nothing too set in stone, and then from there you just communicate. You can talk like, hey, they have a guy mid, they have a scope here, and the strat caller is one who's going to take in all the information coming in from everybody. Enemy in 1 stairs. He's going to notice who kills who's alive on the enemy team. He's going to think about the past rounds. He's the kind of smart player, and he's going to be the one that decides, hey, we should push mid. Take the bomb. You two do this. He's the one who pays attention to all those things and organizes the team's communication. Because in AVA, like I said, I don't believe in set strats. I've tried it. It doesn't work countless times. What works is moving on the flow, keeping fluid, and the strat caller is the one who's in charge of keeping that fluidness going, per se. So that's strat caller, and the fraggers, the one who gets all the kills. The anchor is kind of like just rifles that go positive. They sometimes do very good, but usually they just kind of have around average scores. But you might notice sometimes they'll get a 3K or 4K, and they're usually pretty good at defense. These are the kind of guys, that are very reliable. Because these fragging people like Kimpa, sure, 90% of games they do really good, right? They're dropping like 2.0 KD easy. But, they're inconsistent more than these people I'm talking about right now. The people I'm talking about, the anchors, are very consistent. So what do? They're the kind of player that'll just sit there and watch something. They're very good, they're very consistent, and they're the kind of people, you put them 1 stairs India defense, they can hold the crucial points. You put them on vent, there's nobody getting through the vent. They're not trying to get all the kills, they're just trying to hold an area. They're the kind of player, like, you give them C4, you tell them, don't die with it, or, maybe you tell them to go with the C4 carrier and protect them. They're the kind of person that'll do the objective. after you plant the bomb, they're going to be good at holding the enemy off the site. So they'll be good at covering, the site after you plant. Those are the kind of players those are. They're very consistent. Like I said, they're multi-skilled. Their aim might not be as good as the fragger, and they're not as they're not hunting for frags like the fragger, but of course they'll take their frags as they come. Now I'm gonna go into what I call the support class. What I thought that you could be a support class in EVA. I thought you could run a rifle or a pointman, throw some smokes down for your team, try to get the UAV up, UAVing the enemy players. You know what I mean? Trying to help them push in. But I've tried it. I did okay some games, but I'm going to tell you, I just don't think it's exactly feasible in that sense. As in, your main objective is just to help your teammates. Because the thing you can do is, yeah, you can drop smokes down. Sure. And you can flash an enemy or two before you push, sure. But in AVA, the flash grenades aren't really viable enough for flashing to be a real asset. The smoke grenades are kind of nice, sure. The UAVs are nice, yeah. Those are two things you can do. But I'm just saying it's not enough as a player. I would say a strat caller who's good at smoking and UAVing would be a good combination. So you want to combine the support with something. It's not enough to be called its own class. I've tried it. Like I said, they're valuable. It's valuable to have those skills, but you need to combine it with something else. What that something else is, it's up to you. So now you're asking, well, if the support doesn't exist, does that mean there's just fragger, strat caller, and anchor? I'll say pretty much. I'm going to add something called secondary fragger. Now you're just going to be like, what? Well, now let me explain this. Let me go back through all the classes in detail again. I already told you the generals of the class, right? Well, like I said, the strat caller, in general, is the person who organizes the team. Some skills that, you can recognize a strat caller. They're very vocal. They're aware of everything going on around them. They're the kind of players who, seem to pre-fire a lot. They have a good eye on the radar. They're the kind of players who know the maps inside and out. And they're the kind of players who, in general, the players will listen to. They're the ones that'll say, push two right now, watch your back, watch your flank. They're the ones always calling those kind of things. A strat caller is the kind of person when he's not there, the team just kind of goes for kills and they might do well, but, the players will notice there's a breakdown in communication, there's not as much communication. He's the one who kind of ties the team together. Those are the kind of traits you'll see in a strat caller. I'd say per team, you can maybe have 1 or 2 strat callers. Usually you'll see 1. I can kind of see 2. I don't know. I think a strat caller is a big thing for a team, but it's not exactly necessary. It's possible not to have one, but in general, it's much better to have one, I think. That's what most teams do, though. Now let's move on to the anchor class. So the anchor kind of player, they're usually going to use any class. Really, because a scope can be an anchor. Now you're going to ask, how can a scope be an anchor? Well, for example, X4 Angel, he's a kind of aggressive scope somewhat, but usually I think of him as an anchor. You put him inside 2 site, he can hold down courtyard, nobody's going to get through. He gets 3Ks, he holds them down, he blocks them, they can't enter 2. Anchor. On offense, he'll go right here in mid, snipe, they can't rotate. Anchor. Now, an anchor's player's job, what they're good at, is you notice, like I said, they get a lot of multi-kills. They don't exactly usually rush. They're usually watching some objective, some area, something like that. And out of this kind of player, you'll usually notice, they don't understand the fragger. Like the fragger and the anchor usually have some friction because when they lose, they always think it's the other one's fault. They'll think the anchor will say the other one is frag coring. They'll be like, you're frag coring, you were trying to rush around, you should play slower. Now when the fragger loses, the fraggers will say it's the anchor's fault because they'll say, you weren't holding down your area well enough, or they'll say you were playing too slow. The problem is these players are kind of opposite roles here because one's more aggressive than the other, and one's playing the objective and one's playing for kills. So if you notice, you got to be aware of that. So a good team is going to be, aware. They're going to be aware of each other's roles. But moving on, let's go on to the next class. Let's go on to the fragger. The fragger, like I said, is the kind of player, they rush around pretty aggressively. They get a lot of kills usually. They're the kind of players, they don't care about their deaths so much. I mean, as a fragger, you're not going to want to die because a fragger, they try to stay alive as long as possible. But I'm going to say this, they can do some very risky plays. They'll make a play where, they might die, but then the reward is if they don't die, they're getting a 3K. That kind of thing. And if those plays pay off more than 50% of the time, then they're doing a decent job as a fragger. Because one round, he dies within 30 seconds. Now it's 4 versus 5 for his team. Sure, Next round, he goes big, gets 3 kills. Then it's a 2 versus 5 for his team. Do you see the big benefit reward ratio there? So a good fragger is a huge important thing for a team. Again, they can play any class. You've heard of fraggers, like I said, like Kimpa, Skidoodle, very well known for their ability to get kills with scopes, right? But you also know rifle fraggers. I'm talking Quelly, people with really good aim with rifles. Maybe even, I'd say Nega is more of an anchor, but he could be kind of considered not. I personally consider myself a fragger with my appointment because I play very aggressively. So that's that kind of thing. And the fragger, like what you'll usually see out of them is that, like I said, they don't have a tendency to pick up the C4 because with their kind of roles, picking up the C4 isn't usually something that they want to do because they, like I said, they die often. They get usually have the most kills on the team. They also might have the most deaths on the team. It just depends. But the fraggers usually one of the top 3 on the kill SD board if they get enough kills. They usually don't pick up the C4. They usually focused on either rushing or they're focused on going solo. They'll go on their own side of the map, so they're not gonna. If there's 3 guys going one guy going mid, and one guy going 2, they're gonna be the guy mid or the guy at 2. They're not gonna be with the rest of the team. In general, they can be, but in general, they like to work alone. And now let's talk about the secondary fragger. So now you've heard the fragger, you're like, well, what could a secondary fragger be? A secondary fragger is like the fragger in the sense that they get a lot of kills. I think the main difference is instead of just focusing solely on kills, they're sort of like an in-between, in my opinion, of what I'm calling the anchor and what I'm calling the fragger. They're not going to camp, but they're not going to rush. What they're going to do is they're going to rotate around the map where their teammates need help. Like if they notice it's 1, they're going to go 1. If they think it's 2, they're going to go 2. All players kind of do that, but that's something that the secondary fragger really enjoys. And they're the kind of player, like, the kind of player, you're playing 2 as a scope and you get taken out, and like your rifle teammate, the secondary fragger, rotates in the 2. There's 3 enemies rushing at him from courtyard, and he manages to kill all 3 of them. It's like an anchor play, right? But it's really not, because he wasn't just watching one doorway. He's just able to, for example, kill a guy here, kill a guy here, kill a guy there. That's a secondary fragger. The difference between a fragger and them is, like I said, they're not exactly rushing around the map, playing aggressively, trying to get those kills. It's just they're kind of like cleanup. After their teammates lit up the enemy or something like that, they're going to get those late round kills. They're going to get those clutch situations. But the tendencies of this kind of player is, like I said, they like to play the objective somewhat, but they're not solely on the objective like a anchor might be or a strat caller. And they're the kind of player, like I said, you'll see them getting clutches and such things. So a good team needs to have a combination, I think, of at least fragger and definitely anchors. I say at least most teams have 1, maybe 2 fraggers and like 3 anchors, or you can have a strat caller / support, a fragger or 2, and an anchor or 2 kind of thing, and a secondary. A secondary fragger can replace when I say anchor anytime. Basically, all you really need to have a team is at least one fragger, at least 1 anchor, and then it's good to have 1 strat caller. You can have a secondary fragger, you can have 2 regular fraggers, but your team really needs a fragger. You can't just have secondary fraggers, I think. You don't notice any team, in my opinion, in the top competitive scene who doesn't have that one player who gets a lot of kills, because in general, like I said, if you just had all anchors, sure, they could hold everything down, but there's nobody going out there taking those risk-reward ratios for the team. And in general, that might work out okay, but you're looking at a lot of close games then, like 6-6s. It's really hard, I think a lot of top teams in general rely on their fraggers quite a bit in AVA, and I don't think that's exactly a bad thing either. So, like I said, those are the rules. I told you what you can see out of them. Now, what teams need to do is you need to realize, each other's roles. So, like, as a fragger, if, somebody's a strat caller, like they're calling all the strats or something, and they're doing a support role job. So, this guy, he takes the C4, he's just noticing the map, he's telling us what's open when, he's being a good team player, he's smoking stuff for us, he's just being a good team player. Now, if his score is something like 7-7 and we lose and I'm dropping, a 20-9, I shouldn't be that angry at him because his role on the team was completed. And in reverse, a strat caller, say you're calling strats and stuff like that, and you notice your fragger isn't doing exactly what you say. He's not listening to what you say, but he's going out there doing his own thing, but he's getting a lot of kills. What happens a lot of times, I get frustrated still because they feel like, oh, we lost. Even though you're dropping a 20 bomb, we still lost because of you because you're not listening. Well, what they don't understand is, like I said, the role of the team of Fragger is not exactly to follow the objective or be a team player. All they're there for is to get the kills. And you might think, well, kills are useless, but fraggers are very important because really AV is all about kills. I mean, if you think about it, it's a first-person shooter. Now, even in Demolition, a lot of people try to argue with you and tell you the C4 is the main objective, all that kind of thing. I just wanted to ask you this: how many times do rounds end because the entire enemy team dies? Okay, now think of all the times compared to that the round wins because the C4 is planted. Now you're about to say it's probably a little bit more towards the kills, but it's about even. Well, now I want to ask you something. After the C4 is planted, doesn't the round still end by kills most of the time? So you'll plant it, but you kill all the NRF players, right? Or what about those times where the EU team plants it and then they all die and the bomb gets defused? Notice that they all had to die for that to happen, right? So if we're talking about kills, kills is basically anything except for when you win by the bomb blowing up or when the round time ends. So you're talking, I'd say over 90% of the games and rounds are decided by kills. So, as a strat caller, you need to realize just because you say go 1 and your fragger goes 2, that doesn't mean he's not listening. That means maybe he has a plan, he has something in his mind. Something you need to know about fraggers is usually they're very intuitive. They come up with things on the flow and they don't like to be tied down. So, like Kempa, for example, he's known being famous for his flanks. He'll flank an enemy team as a scope, like just run through their base, and people are like, you're not supposed to do that as a scope. As a scope, you're supposed to camp. It doesn't work that way for fraggers because fraggers are doing the unexpected. They're doing things, they're taking that risk-reward ratio that you normally don't see taken by most players because they're confident they can pull it off. And a strat caller needs to understand that. But like I said, in reverse, the fragger needs to understand that the strat caller is just trying to organize the team, and if the team wasn't organized and there was no strat caller and everybody was just going for the frags and there was no organization or teamwork between the players, that the rotates wouldn't be fast enough, the bomb sites would be taken, and therefore it would be harder to get kills as a fragger, and the rounds are a lot harder. So you need a balance, and you just need to respect each other's roles. Same with the anchor. As like I said, as a strat caller, you might get mad at an anchor because you tell them to push and they don't push, or you tell them to push and they get killed, and you're like, you need to learn how to push. And as a fragger, you might get mad at the support player saying, they're just camping and baiting you or something. What you need to understand as the strat caller in that situation I described is that, like I said, a support player can probably push because all players should have in general game skills. So you shouldn't bait your teammates. You should know how to push. So like you're not going in one at a time. You should know all those things, of course. But a main role of the anchor is not to be the one pushing in. They're the ones, they might watch the back, they might watch the site after it's planted. So that's not really their best thing, is to go in first. They might be going in second or third, picking up the cleanup, but that's usually a secondary fragger in any case, right? So that's not exactly their role. But like I said, they need to at least be as good at it as other people. So like if they do bait, if they do something bad, then obviously it's bad, but I'm just saying it's not their role. As a fragger, you can't really get mad at them, like I said, if it seems like they're just waiting back. Like as a fragger, you might want to be playing aggressively, but they're just kind of like hanging out in the back. You can't be mad and tell them to push up all the time. Now, sometimes, say the fragger pushes up, clears out 2 site, kills everybody in 2, and there's some guy wanting to stay in the spiral. Well, yeah, that's not usually the greatest idea. I mean, sure, you can get them when they're going for mini, but just in general, if they're making a mistake, like I said, it's a mistake, but you have to recognize each other's roles, and that's the important part. A team needs to be able to have, all these roles, be adaptable, and just understand each other. If you don't understand each other's roles and you just argue, nothing's going to happen. I think another common misconception is that whole thing about tryharding and raging and all that stuff. People say, oh, tryharding is noob, raging is noob. I actually disagree with both those. I think tryharding it doesn't really exist. I think, everybody tries to an extent. Even when I'm tired, like last night I was playing a pug, I was kind of embarrassed because I was tired. We didn't win, we came in second or something. But I didn't play my greatest games. But, I kind of said I was tired, which is true. But I'm not going to call anybody a tryhard in a pub or anything. because really everybody tries to win. Like, you might be tired like I was, you might have distraction in your background, you might be trying to ninja defuse, but you're trying in some way, shape, or form. You're still aiming, you're still doing some basic stuff. Nobody purposely just joins the game, runs out there and says, hey, kill me, doesn't shoot their gun, doesn't try to do anything. Nobody does that. You understand what I'm saying? And just because somebody's trying really hard, like they really want to win, that's a good thing. The way you get better is by wanting to win. Don't be afraid of being called a try hard or whatever. Now, I think the correct terms would be like camping. Now, like what I'm saying is, try harding as in trying to win is a good thing. Trying to play correctly, like you're trying to play a pub like it's ESL. That's a good thing. Now, what's bad is when people mistakenly call players tryhards that are just being bad. Okay, like if somebody's camping their base with a scope, they'll say they're tryharding. That's not tryharding. That's just in general. Like, sure, it might get them kills, but it only gets them kills because people aren't serious. In a tournament, it wouldn't work. So what I would call that is pub starring. Pub starring is doing things in pubs that only work in pubs because even though you know they won't work otherwise. So you're playing bad on purpose just to get kills. That's all you care about. You're not doing, you're not playing how you're supposed to be. That's what I would call pub starring. People are calling everybody tryhards nowadays, and it's just not correct because trying hard is a good thing. Trying to win is a good thing. However, pub starring is a bad thing. And there's a big difference between that. And back to what I was saying earlier, forget what else was I saying? Tryharding and what else? Let me think. Tryharding. What goes with tryharding? I don't know. Let's just move on to some other common misconceptions in the meantime. I'm sorry, I kind of forgot my train of thought there. But let's talk about things like baiting. Baiting, I agree. As I said earlier, baiting is a bad thing, but it just depends on the kind of baiting. Okay, so for example, if you have a defensive setup, you have a guy behind the red box, he's just chilling here, he's not going to peek. Then you have a player over here doing this kind of peeking thing. Well, if this player's peeking and the enemy comes down, he shoots him up to half HP, and then this guy dies, and then this teammate at the same time peeks out and kills him. You usually hear from amateur players, this kind of player will be like, oh, you baited me, you shouldn't have got the kill. From top level teams, like we're talking top CGO, top ESL, top ISF teams, you won't hear that. You know why? Because that wasn't baiting, that was a crossfire. Okay, so this player is peeking, and as soon as he shoots or the enemy shoots at him, this player is going to peek because they're essentially trying to get it so that the enemy thinks it's clear. They don't see anybody. They see him. Then they get focused on him, and for that millisecond when they first see him, and they're distracted before they can, readjust to their surroundings. Because as soon as you see an enemy player, your mind you just lose all focus for 1 second. That's when he peeks, and that's when he gets him. It's like on the off guard. So that's not really baiting. Baiting is more or less when, say, you have two defensive players on the stairs, and you have like 3 guys here, and one guy just runs in here and dies and lets them up, and these other 2 guys just kind of like sit here. That's baiting. When you're pushing, you need everybody to go in. So this guy jumps in, as he's shooting, the other guy comes around, pre-fires, and the third guy, you don't want to get lined up, so you wait till you get a chance to come in and not line up. So that's real baiting, though, is when your teammate pushes in and you don't push in with him. So the difference here was, this was a planned bait, I guess. Is it's sort of like you can admit that this guy might die, but this guy's going to get a kill, so it serves its purpose. It's a trade-off. You can hear it called a trade-off, crossfire, all kinds of things, and it's not bad. This player here should not be angry at this player. And so that's the real meaning of baiting, is, like I said, playing back here. A lot of amateur players annoy me because they'll try to talk about, how casual players, really is what I mean here when I say amateur, is they'll try to say, like I said, this player's baiting that player, that's the only reason he gets killed. Or they'll try to say, oh, this guy is try-harding, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, you don't understand what's going on here. You play for the win. If you're a casual player and you're going to say, well, I play just for fun, yeah, well, I'm just going to tell you, it's a lot more fun to play for the win. I mean, you can troll and stuff, but you can also play for the win as you're trolling. That's something that's possible. I figured out what I forgot earlier was raging was the thing I want to talk about, right? So like I said, a lot of times when, casual players, they see a competitive player, maybe not a top CGO level player yet, but an upcoming competitive player or even a top level player, they'll see them, why did we lose? You guys suck, blah 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 blah. They'll think, wow, this guy is, he's a noob, he needs to be kicked off the team, that kind of attitude is bad, he's a bad player, that kind of thing. Well, what I want to say is, I disagree that he's a bad player for having that attitude. I think having that upsetness when you lose is a huge thing a lot of players lack. Like casual players and a lot of competitive players even don't understand. When you lose, you should be upset and thinking, what could we do better? What do I need to do better? And you need to talk about it and think about it. Some competitive players they'll get mad at me when I say, hey, what did we do wrong in the game? What can we do to get better? Think about that. They get mad when I say that. You know what they say? They say, forget about it, move on to the next game. There's no point in talking about it afterwards. But of course, they don't want to talk about it during it either. Those are the kind of players with the attitudes. The opposite of the rage are the cool guys. Those are the guys who are never going to get anywhere and improve. Everybody, all competitive players, all successful professionals in any sport ever, I can attest to this. I would like to see an example otherwise. Get upset when they lose. Now, is it the right attitude to go around calling your teammates bad? Is it going to help your team at all to call them bad? No. Is it something you should do? No. So, the difference here is, any aspiring competitive player struggles with this at first. But as you get better, it happens less and less. It still happens to even the best of us sometimes, but we learn to control it so that instead of getting mad and saying you're bad, you'll think about it in your head. You'll calm down and, go to the bathroom or something or get a drink for 10, 20 minutes, whatever. And you're going to be thinking about, you're going to be going over the head in your mind, how could I, every death you had, how could I have avoided that death? How could I have gotten more kills? As a fragger mindset, as a strap mindset, you got to think, where was everybody? You can kind of imagine in your head where they spawned, where everybody went, what everybody did. Simply, from recreating the game in your head, and you can try to understand what you did wrong. Come up with some clever ideas, like maybe, this team, they played this way. Like I know Nega, for example, always plays with another player with him, like they play as a team. But I was the other day when we were playing on Cannon, I wasn't getting as many kills as I was before because they were kind of camping, playing it passive. I'm not saying camping here is a bad thing, by the way. I'm saying it as in they were just playing more passive. And as a fragger, I'm really aggressive, and I noticed they were kind of getting me. But when I pushed up too far and I was overextending, which usually doesn't happen because most teams don't play that passive. So I thought to myself, one thing I can do to improve my game that I'm going to start doing is when I push up and play aggressive, if I'm playing a kind of team like that, I'm going to end up pushing up to the point that's important. Like on Cannon, I might take the bookshelf, but I'm not going to push past it. I'm not going to run through their spawn and head for that flank. I'll just either hold down that bookshelf and become more of an anchor for that moment, or I'll head back and go try to take something else. Because honestly, like I said, if they're the kind of players that are good, but they're just going to wait for me, then I'm not going to do what they expect. I have to do something other than my usual game. And I was thinking about that kind of stuff after the game happened several hours later. And that's what you should be directing your anger to. You shouldn't be saying you're bad or whatever to the team. You should just be thinking about what you could do better. Now, that being said, I want to say something. A lot of times bad players, casual players, the kind of players who call people tryhards, the kind of players who call people ragers, the kind of people who call bait and stuff like that, they'll get mad when a good player calls them bad, and they'll say, "Hi, hello there, YouTube." So I had a little bit of a distraction there, so I'm gonna keep going from where I was talking about. Like I said, it's not a good idea to rage. I mean, it doesn't really help anything pretty much most of the time. But, you have those people, like I said, those clan leaders of those clans who like to say that they're kind of competitive, kind of casual. Usually older guys, 18 through 20, who like to, say they play sports, so they're not the greatest at AVA because they don't have free time. There's people that, don't understand also, though, that as a good player, if you're good and you know what your role is, say, you're a good pointman, you're a good rifle, you're a good scope, you have a specific class, you're more of a support, you're more of a fragger, whether you know it by the name or not, you know what I mean? You know what you're doing, and you know what a team needs, and you know all these things. And you just get a team of guys, you know what I mean, who are just unworkable. This is the problem, is if a good player tries to play in a clan that's not competitive, they're trying to play with some people who don't know their roles. They can't really play any of the roles because maybe they don't know the maps good enough or whatever. You might think people play this game for 3 years, so they must be decent, right? I've met players who would prove this otherwise, Um, it's just they never entered anything more than just playing for fun. So like yeah, they might know the maps to do what I'm doing, like walking backwards through the maps. Like I mean, you guys might know the maps good enough to do that, but it's like, do they know how to play competitive? If they have no competitive experience, then a good competitive player, you can't do anything, and you're prone to rage. And like in that situation, like I said, it's not good to rage either there. But at the same time, it's not like the other situation. It's different in the fact that if you're with a good team and you're raging, because you lost, you should just calm down, think about it like I did the other day. But if you're playing with people who are just not at your level, you know, to say, then you can't just stop and think about it, because oftentimes maybe you didn't make any mistakes, but it was just the fact that your team wasn't good enough. And if that's the case and it's a constant thing, like, maybe your team drops a game, that's fine. But if it's like over like a week period or a couple day period, you're noticing your team's just not at the same level as you have to decide if they're workable. And if a team is like, they know the maps, they know common camping spots, they try to win, they don't bait, what I mean, maybe they don't know their roles, maybe they're trying to be a fragger. This is a common mistake. Like a lot of new competitive players, they know they don't play bad, it's just they don't know their role. Like everybody's trying to be Kimpa or something, they're trying to be Nega or whatever, they're trying to pull out an M4 or Para. First of all, a lot of people try to use Para, and Para's not a gun that they should be using. But then they try to, like, rush in and get a 4K. They're trying to get all these kills, and it's like, you're not even a kill player. You shouldn't even be trying for the kills so much. You should be focusing on the objective more. You don't. Your playstyle does not suit what you're trying to do. So those kind of players are workable. You know what I mean? It takes some work, but it's workable. But like I said, if you just get an unworkable team full of people who, I'd say this: if your team can't beat random people in match, just like random people, like 70% of the time, when you have a full clan versus like a regular non-clan, then yeah, that team isn't really workable. And I can understand why you would rage, but raging isn't gonna help. In that situation, you should just say, I like you guys, you're my friends, like if they are, but be like, I'm gonna leave my alt in this clan if that's okay. I'm gonna join a different clan on my main because I'm a competitive player. I'm trying to go somewhere, and I just feel like this clan that can't go anywhere. And they'll try to be like, oh, well, teach us, blah, blah, blah. And all you gotta say is, I just feel like it's too big of a gap. Just be really nice, but don't try to make it sound like you're that much better. But just try to say, I don't think it's gonna work out. Be really polite. There's no reason. Arrogance, raging doesn't get you anywhere. Remember. And just, you can be friends with people, or you can play with them, match with them. But like, if you're playing with people like that, you gotta realize, focus on your own individual aim and stuff. You aren't gonna be able to win every game just simply because your team sometimes, and you can't rage at them for that because you know that they're not at that level. So my problem, like I said, with calling people ragers is a lot of times people being called ragers are like better than the person calling them that. So you know what I mean? Like, you're having a good player who's getting called a rager by like a worse player, and the worst player doesn't understand the reason why the good player is raging is because of his lack of skill. Like, should he be raging? No, but it's like, when you good players raging at you, you should understand, why is he raging at me? Maybe you think the problem is you. I mean, what you could do is tell him, hey, stop raging. I understand I did bad, but I'll do better next game, or I'm gonna learn from my mistakes. And be honest when you say it. You know what I mean? Be like, hey, show me what I did wrong. Because if somebody's mad at you because you're playing bad, it's embarrassing, whatever. But like I said, it's a good opportunity to learn, right? Maybe they can teach you some stuff. You can get better. But, calling somebody a rager and then saying, oh, I play sports, or, I'm a casual gamer, that's just excuses. It's like I said, people call people tryhards. First of all, they get the term wrong, and then they're using it as an excuse because they're doing bad or something. Like, oh, you're tryhard. It's like, nah, like I said, I can see saying, it's late, I'm tired. That's not really an excuse. I mean, it is, but I think it's a real one. Whereas calling somebody a tryhard is like, pff, really? You're obviously a casual if you call somebody a tryhard. But anyway, my main point here is, like I said, the roles of each team member. You got all those kind of roles. You got to know each other's roles, and you got to just respect each other, and hopefully, try to get the chemistry going between all the roles. That's how a successful team is made. You can't have a team of all fraggers. I mean, you could try. You'd probably do decent because I mean they're all good players if they're fraggers. But you need more coordination than that, and you need somebody to hold down the site. You can't just be completely running around going for kills, playing it like it's Annihilation with 5 people. That wouldn't work. You need some organization to do with the objective. Um, and you can't have 5 strat people because sure you could have the best coordination ever, but if you don't get any kills, you're not gonna win. Need a fragger. You could have, you know, 5 anchors, have the map on lockdown. They can't do anything, right? But at some point, you know, if the other team is fraggers, they're gonna open up a hole somewhere, and if the anchors, you know, don't coordinate well, they're not gonna rotate well. It's not gonna end well. They're not exactly the best fraggers. So once again, you know, it's not gonna work out. Not gonna work out. So just think about, you know, what your role is. What do you like to do? Do you like just focusing on the kills? Do you like, I mean, are you, at the end of the game, are you always looking at the scoreboard kind of thing? Are you the kind of player instead who focuses on the objective and always thinks about planting the bomb, you know, holding a bomb site, holding crucial areas kind of thing? Are you the kind of player who, you know, like likes to watch one doorway like this? You know what I mean? Think about the things I talked about here. And, you know, remember, these are just general names. Like, I mean, I might call fragger this and that. I might call anchor this and that, but at the end of the day, they're not set in stone. They're not exact. Your playstyle you got to figure out on your own. I mean, heck, you know, like I actually have 2 playstyles. I switch up. Sometimes I'm a fragger, and sometimes I'm more of a ninja fragger. A ninja fragger, you're asking what the f that is. Basically, I rush to like some stupid point on the map, like on Hammer Blow. I'll rush the bridge, and then I'll just camp and wait for them to walk by, you know, because they won't check the corner that I'm in. Like, I'll play a spot, for example, hold on, let me explain it like this. I'll rush here and sit here, and they'll just walk by, and I'm going to wait for them to walk by, and then I'm going to kill them. I'm going for the kills, solely for the kills, but I'm doing it in a ninja fashion instead of a general fragger fashion. So it's sort of like a type of fragger. So you have to find your own unique playstyle. You know, there's, maybe you're none of the 4 I mentioned, maybe you are, like I said, maybe you're a ninja fragger or something ridiculous where like it's a subclass of a class kind of deal thing. It's just, you know, you got to figure out what works for you, and you got to figure out what works for your team, that kind of stuff. But that's all this video is going to be about for now. Good luck to everybody in CGO tomorrow. I'm going to be in it, I think. Good luck, you know, in all your future tournaments and stuff like that. You can also look up, if you're interested, in other games like CSGO and CSS, CS 1.6. You know, they have titles for stuff like support player, fragger. In Black Ops 2, I think they call fragger is called a slayer, and anchor is an anchor. I don't know if they have a term for strat caller. And then they have an objective player, which is basically, you know, the anchor, the strat player kind of thing. Secondary fragger. I mean, you can look them up. There's all kinds of competitive guides out there about different games. They're somewhat applicable to AVA. Kind of borrowed the names from some of them, kind of changed them from my own experience in AVA. You know, I have a lot of competitive background in AVA. So, that's that, guys. Oh, one little side note. You notice I was walking around backwards throughout the video here. That's something I saw a tip for in another game. If you have good map awareness and, like, you know, you can see the map visually in your head, you should try to walk through it backwards. And, you know, this map's pretty simple to walk through backwards. There's not much to get stuck on. And as you can see, I think I did a fairly easy job of it. But if you're a newer player to the competitive scene, maybe you don't know the maps that well, you should try it because, I don't know, maybe it helps. For me, I've always had kind of like a good map memorization, I thought, because like I can remember small details like all the little windows and stuff in maps that sometimes I don't even remember they're there, and then for some reason I think of a grenade spot and I'm like, oh yeah, there's a window there, you know, like it wasn't even in my memory until I needed it, and then it was there. So that kind of stuff. But you need to be able to, you know, envision. Say I see an enemy on radar, I need to be able to envision exactly where they are, maybe think about where they're heading, think about how long it'll take them to get there, think about where they're going to be looking, think about how long it'll take me to get there, what kind of angle I can get on them, what kind of peak I can get on them. That's what the whole walking backwards thing is good for, because you can visualize, you know, the whole map. And while I'm doing this, I'm not even looking at my radar in the upper left. I'm just walking around using my memory here as a guide, and that's what you should do. So that's one of the little practice tips for the day. And like I said, this video is basically over about the roles. Just try to figure out your role, choose a gun that suits your role, and do what you enjoy. Like, one rule, I keep saying it's the end, but it's not going to be this will be the last thing for sure. Um, as an anchor player, a lot of times you'll see me use like M4 or like Exterminator from Moss. And one of my problems was I was in Artifacts, and I was trying to be a support player at that time, which is, like I said, a class that doesn't work. And I was trying to be a support player, and all the support players usually are supposed to have like guns like M4 and XM8. At the time, I like Power and Appointment, which I still like both those, right? Well, Neil, our clan leader, and Josh, my friend X1 Angel, they kept telling me, you should play M4. We already got, 2 or 3 powers, so we don't need any more powers. We got enough powers. And they say, Sketchfest is appointment. We don't need another appointment, which, by the way, you can run more than one appointment. They're wrong on that. But, so I tried using M4 and XM8. I used to be good with an M4 at some point, but it's just not my gun anymore. And, I was playing with stuff I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't do very well. And at the end of the day, I was going to leave the team. I think Neil removed from the team and I was inactive anyway. But the deal on that is, like, just don't do something that you're uncomfortable with just because it's supposed to be. Like, if you're, a fragger, everybody will tell you should be a scope or you should be a PAR user, Quelly, or you should use a PGM, or you should use an FR. Like, look at Skadoodle and Kempa. They get all the kills, Well, look at me. MP7. Name one competitive player like ISF or AIC player that everybody knows in the game who uses appointment gun and gets a lot of kills. Nobody. And you know what? I still do it. I still play Fragger. I still play appointment, and I think I do fairly well because I like MP7. It works for me. I like being a Fragger. It works for me. So I just do what works for me. I don't think, okay, well, the best fraggers in the game use this. I want to be a fragger, so I'm going to use that, So, like I said, you can be like an anchor and use a scope, which usually you'd think the scope would be a fragger, but no. And you can be a fragger and use something like a FAMAS MK3, which usually you would see that in an anchor. Well, you know what I mean? You can just do what works for you, and that's that. And so that's going to end this video. Like I said, good luck, guys. Comment below if there's any questions. And have a good day.